Johnson, and this is Focus on Liberia. Hit it! From Cape Mount to Cape Palmer, Mount Nimba to Atlantic Ocean, Obomi Hills to Pocondre, to educate, elevate, and promote. Talk about home affairs, hey, in diaspora, current affairs, hey, reliable information, history, ooh, talking about culture, yeah, politics, education, entertainment, business, sports, advertisement, articulation. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. From Monday to Sunday.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another session of Focus on Liberia. I am your co-host, Gabriel. I have in the studio with me my usual suspect, Wonder and Jimmy. Hopefully, we should be expecting Thomas to join, and also Larry will be joining us too. So that'll be awesome to have a great discussion. Today, we want to talk about the trending, I don't know what you want to call it, topic or issue about War and Economic Crime Court, and also the uh, the topic of asset recovery. What are their strategy to recover assets? What are the process? Matter of fact, we even want to boil it down to defining what is asset recovery. How do you go about it, right? So we're going to have a great discussion today. Again, as always, as we do on this show, we just look at it from an economic lens. We want to see some of the things that are how that is going to benefit the country. What we're going to do with if we do recover some of the money, what are we going to do with it? How do we reconcile if there's even going to be a reconciliation process? And so we want to explore that length and look at it from basically, as we said, an economic side or finance side. And so please do join us, whatever you are. Take a moment, share, grab a cup of coffee, tea, water, atay, whatever you drink, and join us for the next hour and a half. Let's have a good discussion. Thank you. Guys, welcome to the show, and it's good to have you guys on again.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good to be here. Let's
Perfect. So, as I said earlier, we have I think let's start with the team. We have I think an announcement. We had an announcement about the asset recovery team that was put together. I don't know if you guys have had some time to go over the list. We have some people there. I think one of our buddies is on there too, Alex. But also there's a bunch of people that are on that list as well. Most of them I can say, almost all of them, I don't know their background, so maybe you guys are familiar with them. So maybe you can share some lights on their background and how their experiences, whether professional or in the public field, will help that asset recovery team or the not War Economic Crime Court. Sorry, correcting me here. The asset recovery team. Sorry. Yeah.
Well,
Any of you guys familiar with them? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not too familiar with them personally, not on a personal basis,
Mm,
but it's a 15-member team.
okay.
Um, and leading the team as chairman is Councillor Edwin Claw Martin.
Mhm.
Okay, and I understand that he has some experience in the field, and let's see. According to my research here, he's he was working with the LACC.
Okay.
Okay, he's a graduate from the Louis Arthur Graham School of Law.
Okay.
Okay, so he does have experience in this type of work.
Okay.
Okay, his vice chair is Miss Mima Robertson.
Mm.
Okay, and her background. Let's see. Let's see if I can find her. Yeah, I'm not. That's why I'm not too familiar with her background as vice chair. But as people have told me, she too. I think they call her Mima Robert, but I think her name is Mima Desiree Robinson.
Okay.
And
now is she? It's not just her, but the entire team. Wonder, maybe you're familiar with any of those guys on the on
yeah,
that team.
maybe you be Wonder, you know.
I mean, I've had professional working relations with Coffee from the FIU.
Okay.
So professionally, he checked all the boxes.
Yeah.
I have working relations with Martin.
Colley.
You know, we all from the LMPA. We practice law around the Temple of Justice. He was county attorney, I think.
Who, Martin Colley or?
But I mean, in a Liberian setting, he's a protege of Serena Cephas.
Okay.
A protege. If you remember when Costa was pursued and Costa crossed the border into Sierra Leone, it was he and Serena Cephas that were pursuing Costa, even though they knew that the offense was a political offense and no sound country would extradite somebody on a political offense. They said he violated, I think, what was it? Laissez-passer or something like that. You don't do extradition on something like that. And they knew. But, you know, in Liberia, when they give you a government job, then there is no way now for you to tell your boss the truth.
Yes.
So they decided they would do what we had told them to do. And that's how he been operating. And that's how he was entrusted with the county attorney office and then subsequently taken to LACC. And then I think he tried to break away from the fold. And obviously you saw what it did to him. So, you know, that's basically what I know about him. But in its broadcast, I will totally opposed to the idea of an asset recovery executive order, asset recovery team, or asset recovery, anything for that matter.
Wow.
So that's the position I would take in this discussion.
And I definitely want to hear your view on that. And I think I haven't really gotten people feedback in terms of what they think of it, but I think that is the most opposing view yet that I've yet to hear. In terms of I definitely want to hear, because I think everybody is You know what I'm hearing is like a lot of people are celebrating this.
Positive.
Right. Everybody think this. So I want to hear the opposing side of
Okay,
why
so
the
I will provide
argument.
that for you today.
Yeah, I think it will make a good conversation. I would like to hear that
Yeah,
opposing side.
I will
Yeah,
provide that for you today.
yeah, that's good. That's gonna be an interesting conversation. Larry, Prof, thank you for joining us, man. And you look like
Gentlemen,
money. You look like money.
You guys are live, right? You know you are live, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're live.
Oh,
Well,
okay. I thought it was casual. All right.
oh,
Why
no,
you
we
just tell me
live.
I was showing the background? Larry, you look like money today. What's going on? Welcome.
man, gotta get on a couple of conferences later. So
Okay.
just
Welcome.
try to
Welcome
tighten it up.
Yeah. Welcome. So I'm sure you saw the topic. So we're talking about the asset recovery team that was put together, and we want to look at their the experiences, the team, but most importantly, what they were set out to achieve, and if God's willing, like Charles Tiller will say, if they do, recover any asset, what do they plan to do with that? What does this message actually send to the investors community that now that we have an asset recovery team, what is this image does it paint to the outside world about Liberia and our future moving forward? So we want to explore every side of that angle and have a good discussion about that. So what I was asking everybody on the team here is that whether we're familiar with those on that team, and I think Wanda said we know Alex is on there. I think they listed a few other people on there, but I will be honest, besides Alex, I don't know anybody else on that list. I don't know any of their background.
Yeah, I think just Alex and maybe Martin Coley, probably the two names that come to mind. But
Right.
other than that, I don't know who those people are. I mean, I was on the closing argument the other day, and those guys like Tomali and Ben Sandy, a lot of those guys didn't know a lot of the people who, the names that popped up on this list. And even I think one or two of the names they mentioned, they said the individuals had sort of a shady background. So it makes you kind of wonder. But if you're going to put any team on a pitch, if you're going to put any team together, whether it's asset recovery, whether it's a team you put together to develop a software, a team you're putting together to fix a sewer system, or if you put internet in your country, you have to look at the teams. And I think you guys may have probably touched on it, but you have to look at the team's qualifications, right? Because
Of course.
it's meaningless if you go to get a carpenter to go and install your internet services. You'll be waiting for a long time to get that thing done. So you have to match the skill sets with the requirements, with the job requirements. So I don't know how many of those folks have any background in asset recovery. Or, I mean, Alex has a lot of background in terms of financial systems and things of that sort, which is great. I think it brings a ton of credibility to the team. But other than that, I don't know if those folks have ever dealt with recovering assets or chasing money in different locales, different locations, and trying to bring it back. So I think it's just a waste of time and effort. I don't think they're going to, if they recover anything, it may not be even 1% of the potential they could possibly recover, right? Because based on estimates, even when we try to do it, we were looking at over like $1 to $2 billion that we discovered were in the BVI, the British Virgin Islands, and other parts of the US and Africa. So that was what, and the team included a bunch of professionals who have done this stuff before, right?
Yeah.
We didn't come with a bunch of rookies. We brought people who work with the British intelligence, people.
This was when, Larry. This was in which regime or what year?
This was when we was interested in doing asset recovery.
Yeah, okay, that was asset. Okay, that was WIA's composition.
Yeah, and understanding what killed it, I think it's an important element for anybody interested in doing asset recovery. You want to understand why is it that WIA didn't succeed. So if you start looking at comments made by Arthur Johnson, like in March towards May of 2020, and you start seeing his criticism of what happened. I mean, I was in meetings and I know who killed it and I know what was going on and why it died. We had top level lawyers. The lead attorney over here, one of my buddies, the lead attorney, a partner in one of the largest law firms in the US. In terms of, he lost over almost like close to $500,000, close to 500,000, chasing behind trying to get this stuff set up and rolling. You know, spending thousands of dollars flying to Liberia to meet with these guys. You had individuals in the UK, I'm talking to British specialists and things of that sort, and these guys are spent, even Grant Thornton, right? Grant Thornton,
Yeah.
forensic accounting firm,
Yeah.
who came to the CBL, they did a lot of investigation. When they left, they were so frustrated. The way you check Front Page Africa, you will see the article, they were threatening to sue the Liberian government on the WIA because they wasted so much time and effort. So they were threatening to sue, and they would have won because they had a contract. You know, we also had an agreement and a contract in place. So lessons learned. You know, when I spoke to my guy, the lawyer, the other day, because there were a couple of people interested in doing some other business in Liberia, he said, "Look, listen, Larry," he said, "I've lost almost 500,000 in terms of billing hours, in terms of my own money I've expended." He said, "I know you've lost thousands of dollars trying to help Liberia as well." This is a guy who billed at almost $1,100 an hour. That is not a small piece of change to bill people at $1,100 an hour. So he's a partner in one of the largest law firms. They have offices around the world, right? So he said, "Look, there's no way I'm going to get, you know, myself interested in doing anything in Liberia." This is a guy, if you look at the New York Post, you look at some of the big major headlines, former federal prosecutor, you know, he's worked with the SEC, the Fed, and all these other federal agencies when it comes to financial crimes. He defends. So, I mean, it was just a waste of time trying to do anything in Liberia. You know, it's just a waste of effort and waste of time because I don't think some of the people are serious at all.
So my question to you, Wonder and Jimmy, is that, you know, so because I think I don't know, did we try that? Did we try recovering asset during Ellen time? I think we tried, right? Right? I
Yeah.
think it was I think somebody said it was 8 million recovered, and all of that went to lawyer fees, and they never really put that money to use. Instead, whatever they recovered, they just spent it on lawyer fees and stuff, right? So if that is the case, and we have tried and that didn't go anywhere, so there's a little bit of trend here. Why do we think, and I think this is maybe Wonder can make his opposing view to that, why do we think this team will now be some of, you know, a team that succeed in doing what two other teams or administration hasn't been able to do?
Okay. Firstly, you know, especially for our local public, I think there is a misunderstanding between asset retrieval,
right,
and asset recovery. So, and sometimes the local population makes it up. If the government gave you asset to work with, and you abscond with that, you never show up again, or maybe your regime is over and you try to abscond with that, that's a retrieval process. That only takes maybe the GSA or the LMP to go after you and retrieve that from you. That is an administrative process. If you employ fraudulent means, corrupt means to acquire government assets that you are not entitled to, and that will border on corruption and financial crimes, and that may elicit the need for asset recovery. But the question is, when does asset recovery come in? And that's why I think people got it mixed up in Liberia. I was checking the steps. It looks like step 7 to me, not step 1. So you don't start off by saying, I want to recover asset. It's not how it starts. It starts with maybe allegations and investigations, then prosecution. You got to get a conviction. There might be legal challenges to the conviction. It might end up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court might do a final confirmation of the conviction, and then issue a confiscation order,
Mhm.
or they can call it asset forfeiture order,
Mhm.
or a recovery order. It is that order that is now your green light to commence the asset recovery. So it is totally misunderstanding to start with asset recovery, because that's not how it starts. It starts from the investigation, prosecution, conviction, affirmation of the conviction, then a restitution order or an asset forfeiture order. And that is now your green light to commence the recovery. So why set up a committee, start paying them when you have not even done step 1 to step 5? But you know, I feel like politically, Baka has not had good news for a while. And so in the search for good news,
Yeah.
the asset recovery just look like the kind of thing that you do and get a lot of, positive, news. So, and that has worked in his favor since the asset recovery news came about. There has been a lot of positive reviews, but for some of us who know the intricacies, especially having worked as a certified financial crime specialist for a while, I mean, it's just funny that the way people look at it, how can you start with step 7? You got to start with step 1, 2, 3.
You want to name the 7, because I knew there were 3 basic tasks, and that was identifying, first, and then freezing, and then confiscating, and then recovering. So you want to mention those 7 so we can be more aware of
Yeah. So what are the
7
steps in the?
It's my made up, but I'm saying you have to audit and investigate, so we can call that 1, right?
Okay.
You have to audit and investigate, so to get facts.
Yep.
Right.
Then when you get facts, you have to probably charge some people. You have to charge people and prosecute them.
Right.
At the point that you are charging, you may decide to freeze the asset if you have identified the assets.
Okay.
And the reason you are freezing it because when the end of the criminal process comes about, you don't want to go looking for the assets again.
Or you seize it, right?
No, freeze, not
Okay,
seize.
freeze. Okay.
Because under the law, you cannot seize it without the completion of the due process. So you can freeze. So, but most times they will prosecute without freezing. It happens. Sometimes you don't know where the assets are, so you just prosecute. So when you go through the trial and there's a conviction, and then the judge, there will be appeal and all those other process, right? When it gets to the Supreme Court, the judge will say, okay, final now, we affirm the conviction, and we know that you took, let's say in the Browning Samoka case, we confirm that you took $1 million. You have to restitute along with fines and other things. It is that ruling that is now your starting point,
right,
to recover the $1 million that the Supreme Court said, for example, Samoka took. Maybe Samoka, if you didn't freeze it at the time of the charges, then you now have to identify, trace it, and even if you were to go to a foreign jurisdiction, that ruling from the court is what you're going to present to them to say, look, we had a ruling in Liberia, and we found this man guilty for this amount of money, and the court has ordered a retrieval or a forfeiture. And so we want this asset. And then it will go through another legal process in the other country. And when there is a court ruling, then the combination of those 2 court rulings is what will give you the assets. So to start the process as asset recovery is really shocking for me. And I don't understand what's really going on in Liberia.
Wow.
Just one more point.
Yeah.
There may be an instance where there is no court case and there may be a non-conviction asset recovery. Let's see how that happens. Let's say the government were pursuing a corrupt government official, for example.
Right.
And let's say he heard of it and he left the country, but he left in his apartment $5 million. And the government came and saw the $5 million and took it. So can they now start spending that money? No. They have to take that money to the court under a civil process and have a judge declare that this money is legally forfeited. And when the judge orders that the money is legally forfeited, then now the government can recover it. So there is no such thing as asset recovery, whether domestically or internationally, without a court order. And for you to get that court order, there is a long series of process. And some of these things take years. Now you carry for executive order that is 1 year to carry on a work that could take maybe 3, 4, 5 years. I mean, what's going on?
So here's my question to you, Jimmy. Do you have any? Maybe you want to add to that?
No, let go. Okay, go ahead. I will come in a minute.
My question to you, I think Larry said something. I'm glad. Thank you for going over the steps, and I think from what you just said, it seems as if we're starting at step 7 as opposed to just identifying the asset that we're supposed to, go recover. Maybe supposedly, what on the other side? Let me look at it from the other side. What if the team that or the administration tells you that we set up this team to do the identification, to identify those assets that we will recover? Maybe the team is in task to do everything, so I want to give him the benefit of the doubt on that aspect of it, right? But I think you made a good point that as if we're jumping ahead and nobody's even questioning the steps in this process here in terms of identifying the assets. But Larry says something, right? I think this is where I think sometimes we get cloudy, and I think you mentioned something that we just look at the political celebrity around it, the noise around it, the excitement around that we forget to look at the basic fundamental, right? Larry says something that some of the people that work on the previous case in George Weah term were high profile people. He talks about the Grant Thornton law accounting firm, some of those high profile lawyers who could not even get anywhere. From the experiences of the people we just mentioned, we cannot even say they're at that level in terms of experience or even work at that high level profile. The question now becomes, why do we think these people will do any better than the previous case, the previous people? Like what experiences do they have, or be it in Liberia or outside of Liberia, that make us think that they will be successful in terms of seeing out this thing through the process, And
allow me to come in for that question.
I have a follow-up. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, so just what Councilor Freeman just said. Mm-hmm. It is good for ratings. Right now, if we were to take a Buckeye approval ratings, it's probably sky high because he's introducing this ISTEP, the accountability into the country. He started with the War Crimes Court. Now we're talking about asset recovery. Mm-hmm. So it's a great political move to solidify your position. But your question you asked, do we make think that this will be successful? Well, even if the other attempt was not successful, as Larry elucidated, mm-hmm. even if it was not successful in Ellen time or not successful Larry, I want you to tell us what thwarted the whole effort in Weah time. I'm very curious to know what.
I don't know if you'll be able to share that, but we would love to.
What nuked the whole thing? But the idea is, it may have failed before, but maybe now we want to get together and do it the right way. But the first things I see is, instead of them appoint few people like a skeletal members, like maybe a chairman, a vice chair, or and an advisor, but they've appointed a 15-man delegation where we already have other agencies, accountability agencies in place, like the LACC, the GAC. You would think that this body that they were forming is going to glue, be like the glue between these organizations to bring it about. But so it doesn't look like a good start because the way they did it. But as the council was saying, there is a methodology to this. to accurate recovery. And just what he said, the first thing is collecting intelligence and evidence. That's the first thing you got to do. Have we collected that? And the next thing is about security assets, court process, enforcing orders, and then finally the return. So when I look at it as if why are we making all these appointments when we have, the ship is not on the road yet? Are we jumping the gun? And it makes you think that this effort will not be successful because it is not being approached in a more defined professional way that we will achieve results. And that's how I look at it. The idea is good, but are we approaching it like experts, like how Freeman was explaining it? Are we approaching it in the right way? So the idea is good, but I'm not sure about the approach.
Larry.
Look, I think the government right now just like to say things that sounds good, kind of that feel good, make them feel happy kind of thing. Like we're gonna set up a program to teach 10,000 young people in IT.
Yeah.
You don't have the resources to do it. You say those kind of things because it's kind of a feel good. Oh, I'm doing something, but you can't measure it. It's not tangible. It's not realistic. You can't get it done. So you're wasting your time and you're wasting the people's time. And then you're setting yourself up for people to have a checklist of failures. You come in, you list of failures. Because George Weah said it when he came in, right? He said he was going to go after these ill-gotten wealth. And the president, Boycott, came out. He said the same thing too. They're going to go after these ill-gotten wealth. But you need a strategy. You need a plan. You just come about, say these things, and then just think it's going to happen miraculously, right? Because when Nigeria started going after the first female head of OPEC, she had stolen hundreds of millions of dollars. And to Mr. Freeman's point, you need evidence in order to bring forth a case, because it was that case against her that led to a lot of luxury properties that she had been seized. She had like a $35 million estate somewhere in Nigeria. And then there was a whole bunch of people who had benefited from that scam, that the properties were being seized in places like Houston and things like that. The ARAT team or the asset recovery team that we have put together, right? So you have the textbook strategy, which Mr. Freeman just mentioned, but sometimes you don't need to go the textbook route. But you will still need evidence, whether it's the GAC report or you need some sort of evidence to say, oh, okay, this thing has been looked into, and we know that some people absconded or some people stole some money. Because what those guys ended up doing was they didn't have to go to court in some of those cases. They were able to approach those people and threaten them with litigation to make them start to pay up or restitute. They didn't pay back all the money, but some of them were able to give back the money just off the threat of going to court. So I think the ARAT team recovered almost like $500,000, but I was just a little drop in the bucket. But they had bigger, grander ideas in terms of how to go about it. So despite CFA's being on sanctions list, this was before he was on sanctions list. But Lafayette Gould, and not the ANC guy, because I remember a young lady mentioned it yesterday. Thelma Gibson mentioned it yesterday. I just want to mention Lafayette Gould, Arthur Johnson, Serena Cephas. They came to the U.S., right? I took them over to New York. We sat down, had meetings with a big law firm. But you need a plan. So what they need to do, if the president wants to do this, you don't come out with a committee. This whole committee task force thing, it's like old school. It's like from the 60s, 70s kind of old school strategy. You don't do that. What you need is you get a lead attorney. The lead attorney with international experience. That's what we had the right strategy. But you have people entrenched in the system that didn't want to see this asset recovery thing happen. And no self-respecting African dictator will leave a trail behind them where you can just easily find money. Because when Charles Taylor stole all that money, or allegedly stole all that money, because in his testimony he said, people need to prove it. So when even the Globe newspaper, I think based in Boston, and some other magazines had accused him of stealing billions and accused him of being a spy for CIA, he was willing to threaten them with a lawsuit because he felt they didn't have any way to prove it. So that's why the attorney that Ellen Johnson Sirleaf hired, he said, look, this is going to be difficult. We know Charles Taylor took a lot of money, but we just can't find it. And they only managed to recover $8 million. So Mr. Freeman is absolutely correct, right? There's two strategies. You're looking to maybe grab, I think what they focused on is what Mr. Freeman just mentioned. I think what they focused on really is looking at the assets domestically.
Yeah, not the one.
They're not looking at the bigger picture of the billions that is possible, that is out there that they can get their hands on. You know, you read the Panama Papers, the Paradise Papers, you see what's happening in the British Virgin Islands. They're not thinking in that kind of scope because they don't know. They've never been there. They've never seen it. They never researched it, so they don't know. So they think in small scale, little task force will just go after, oh, we see this person here, the president, special assistant, built a big mansion. Where did he or she get that money from? That's the kind of thing they're looking for, which is fine. They might recover $1 to $2 million doing that, but they're missing the bigger picture.
Yeah. So go ahead, Wanda.
Yeah, I just wanted to chip in there. In almost every instance, you might have to go to court. Whether you pursue the criminal route, you pursue international negotiation, because even if you had an arbitration, for example, it still is technically a legal process. So there is almost no instance in which you won't pursue a legal strategy. Whether you pursue criminal conviction, then you pursue asset recovery, or you threaten people and then you negotiate and some money come up, but eventually you might have a court order, because the court order makes it easy for the authorities in the other country to work with you. Because if
Can I engage with you real quick with a little quick Q&A?
Yeah, sure.
So, Mr. Freeman, I approached you. I said, listen, I just look at the GAC report. You were given charge of $1 million to head this project over here. And I noticed in this GAC report that you cannot account for almost $900,000. Here's the thing. I noticed you have a property over in Caldwell that before you came to office, you didn't have any money, but now I see you have that property over there. Here's the thing. I am willing right now to allow you to restitute maybe 50% of that money, or we can go to court and I can sue you for the entire money and maybe prosecute you criminally. What will you do?
Okay. It depends on whether the person is in Liberia or the person is out of Liberia.
You're in Liberia.
Okay, good. If it's in Liberia, most likely they will say go sue. Take me to court.
If you're out of Liberia.
Because there's one, they know that it's going to take forever to even start a court case.
So what happens if
Two,
you're out
they
of
know
Liberia?
that the judges may be up for grabs.
Granted, what happens if you're out of Liberia?
So those are things. And let me chip in on the local thing when it happened on an Arthur Johnson case. The first thing, Serena Seaford is not a serious person. Serena Seaford and her man Martin, they don't have the ethical, wherewithal to pursue something like that. Those guys are just hustlers. So Serena Seaford used it as an opportunity to shake down people.
Yeah.
He came up with a list.
Yeah.
And he said, these are people who took government assets illegally. And so you come see us. Obviously, some people who knew they were engaged in corruption went and saw him. And some people decided they would hire a lawyer and tell you, say, go to court. I will see you in court. And eventually the people who said go to court, nothing came out of that because Serena Seaford never intended to go to court. Serena Seaford just wanted to shake down people and get something for his. I mean, that man was her on audio or whatever with a fugitive discussing bribe money.
Yeah.
And he stayed in that government job. Just imagine, he stayed in that government job until the US had to take action. So Serena Seaford and her protege, Martin, I mean, even if he wanted to recover assets, that is almost like a non-starter.
Let me roll you back to the question I asked you.
Yeah.
Given the scenario I just gave you, the person is outside of Liberia, here in the US, in New York City. The attorney, the FBI, or the US attorney office come and approach you and say, listen, Mr. Freeman, we have evidence that the property that you have over in New York City was purchased with ill-gotten wealth. You have an opportunity right now to restitute $500,000 or go to court with us, and we will go ahead and prosecute you for the full amount and put you in prison here in the US. What would you do?
Yeah, if it's abroad, I think it could be 50-50. And I'll tell you why it's 50-50. Some corporations, it depends on the amount. If a corporation operating in billions and you bring a maybe 50,000 or 10,000 keys to them that they can handle it with a non-disclosure agreement, they
The
could handle
scenario
it for
is $1
non-disclosure
million.
and close the case.
The
But
scenario is $1 million.
here's a point.
The U.S. Attorney Office. I
for
want to
the FBI and the attorneys to get involved, they will need concrete evidence, some kind of evidence. They just can't circumvent the evidence part of it. And the audit report is not sufficient evidence because the audit report only look at some administrative issue, but it doesn't look at it from a criminal standpoint. So the audit report is a pointer that you must do detailed forensic investigation. It is on the basis, let's assume even you didn't go to court, but for the FBI and other international body to get involved, there must be a detailed forensic investigation, not just an audit report. That's why when there's an audit, what BWACA needs to do now is to commission comprehensive forensic investigation. It is on that basis that somebody can say, I don't want to go to court. I mean, the evidence you have on me is too much. Let's talk. But if you don't even have that, what is the basis for somebody to say, let's talk?
So does he have any forensic accountant and fraud investigators on that team who can, I think Larry said something, right? Where the cases in Liberia will be easy to find. You can do reporting. But what about, how do you trace money that leaves Liberia to go to like the Virgin Islands, the Cayman Island, and all of those British islands? That the other thing is, we got to have relationship. What is our relationship with those people for them to be able to cooperate with us? You know, they can say, you know what, go to hell. We don't want to work with you, right? So do we have fraud accountants, you know, forensic accountants, and like we said, the top lawyers on that team who can not just work domestically, but able to build those relationships with those other countries or islands who are pretty much shell, like pretty much tight like Fort Knox. If you don't, until you come with something legitimate, they're not going to give you, they're not going to work with you.
I don't even see Molu, who was in front of all of this during the campaign. I don't even see him part of the team or anywhere in the administration now that it's come to fruition. You know, so I don't, who is there? That's a good question. Do we have any professional investigators besides Alex on that team?
I want to see Alex, for example, because I know that there is no difference between Serena Seaforth and Martin. They are just the same people. So if the U.S. can put sanction on Serenius, I think it's just by oversight that it has not extended to Martin. They are the same people, made of the same cloth. But here's the point. That work that we are talking about, the MOJ is authorized to do it. The LSCC is authorized to do it. The FIU is authorized to do it. So you have 3 agencies that you are paying from the government budget. What is the point in getting the 4th agency?
Which one? Which is the one that is set up, right?
The one that is set up.
Yeah.
What is the
I think
point
that's the
for
case
a
you and
poor
Larry are
country?
making, right?
Now, what countries do when they get the kind of evidence I'm talking about, either you go the Larry route where you don't want to go to court, you want to just use the evidence and, you know, squeeze some people to pay up, and some people based on the kind of profile the organization they're running, they could pay up and avoid the whole court thing.
Noise, yeah.
Yeah, but for other people, they will tell you, you know, bring the evidence, let's see the evidence and let's go to court, whatever. Okay, but what is the point for a poor country hiring people? You already got 3 agencies authorized in the statute to do it.
Exactly, right.
Then you create another one. Then you set up them, give them money. You have not even identified the asset or anything yet. Other countries, when you have now squeezed the asset, located it, and all of that, then you give somebody, you hire somebody on commission.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's a win you get paid. You no win, no pay.
Mm-hmm.
So you have an opportunity to pursue in international circles on a win and pay basis. Why hire people, pay them, even when you have not yet even done the investigation or have the evidence of what you need to cooperate with other people out there? So, I just think Bwaka is looking for good news politically, almost like what he did with the drug test. We got serious drug problem in the country. He decided to bring all the television cameras, and take a drug test. And after that, what happened? Nothing. The last thing I heard, they handcuff a teenager or in Buchanan for taking drugs. It just shows you they have no idea what to do. So you handcuffing teenagers for taking drugs, and your policy is to bring on TV cameras, and submit a drug test.
So let me put this question to you guys. This is a chicken or the egg question. Which come first, the War and Economic Crime Court or the Asset Recovery? Because I think the War and Economic Crime Court will help you identify people who committed economic crimes. After that, then you can now go to recover those assets those individuals stole, right? But it seems as if the team has been set up and the Economic Crime Court is still in process. It hasn't really taken off yet. So I don't know, maybe I'm looking at this wrong,
The way I looked at it when I hear about that economic, I'm thinking they're looking at it from a historical context. What happened years ago during the war, and because it coincided with the war crimes court, so I looked at it like that. Whereas this current situation where people are after the war in the subsequent administrations who have been misappropriate government funds, that can be done by the asset recovery or even the bodies that already exist, the LACC, the MOJ, and all of that. So I too, it looks like posturing. That we're doing something that's not. Sounds good, but it is not going to be effective, especially the way it's going about. Just like Mr. Freeman just illustrated, there are things you have to do first before even putting together some body to go after it. There's preliminary stuff you have to do, and I when I saw the number of people on the team, that's when I knew there's something wrong, because there's way too many people for such an operation when you already have pieces and bodies in place to do the same thing.
Yeah. So I have you guys have another?
And just a point, Bwaka is not committed to this thing. To be frank with you, it's one thing to say, I want transparency and accountability. It's quite another thing what you do. I mean, for the past 6 years, Bwaka was like hand in hand with Ure, for example. And Ure was giving, Bwaka was taking. When the Ure thing slowed down, he went in the hands of Prince Johnson. Prince Johnson was providing the votes, Bwaka was taking. So, to convince me that this Bwaka is really committed to war crimes or economic crimes, I have my doubts. I think he's just a political person. He understands politics, and when he's being squeezed to the wall politically, he comes up with something that will make the population happy for a while. And while they are happy, they will forget about the policy failures, the policy lapses, and then when they realize, but very soon, Bwaka will understand that government funds are not unlimited. CDC, when they came to power, they had the same thinking that government funds were unlimited. So they told all the people, you come, we'll put you on payroll, we'll send you to places, and all of that.
Yeah.
And then after a few months, they realized they can't pay. Then they went to harmonization. And harmonization made them unpopular. And eventually they were put out of office because the people decided, we'll harmonize your votes. So
that's a good way to look at it.
All this thing, you have 3 organizations, FIU, LACC, Ministry of Justice, and to some extent the Liberian National Police, because they work with the Interpol. So you have these. with statute. You have one that Boubacar is yet to create, the Office of the Ombudsman, that will look into code of conduct issue. So you have technically 4 that you are currently paying. And then you leave all of that and create a new organization with 15 persons that you're going to start paying. You know, very soon you will realize that there is just limited funds.
That's another topic we don't even want to get into in terms of our limitation when it comes to finances and from a budgetary standpoint. I think that's a whole topic for another time. But I do agree with you, you know, and I don't think that's an aspect that they're looking at, that, you know, regardless of all these ideas that they have about recovering assets and recruiting all these people. I think what he's doing is just from a political standpoint, like, hey, you stood with me in doing the campaign. I'm obligated. Most of those people you see on that list are just people who want to support us, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like a reward system, even though we don't want to put that out there. It's just a reward system that, but he, like you said, I agree with you. He failed to understand that, you know, push will come to shove eventually, and you already a budget shortfall, right? You already have a budget shortfall. You know, you came back in the international community. Nobody put anything in the pen you were putting out there. You know, so you went back empty-handed. You instead of looking at way to mobilize domestic revenue collection, you're over there just creating all these organizations that will continue to seep money out of your pocket, and they're not looking at that. But as I always said, give them 6 months, give them to a year. They will wake up from that dream that they're having. All that celebration will fade away, and the reality will hit. But I want to go a deep dive into this. So I know we talk about the asset recovery, and we'll touch a little bit on the economic crime court. I want you guys to think about the image from an investor's standpoint or investor's standpoint that is going to put out there. Do you guys think it is going to change our image as a country that, you know, is serious about, you know, that is now favorable to investors to come in? Would that do anything to our image from our international standpoint? You know, whether the asset recovery or the economic crime court or the war crime court that we just, you know, trying to push forward.
Yeah, let me take quick 2 minutes on this. I'm probably even less than that.
Yeah.
So I think to your point, Gabriel, this whole fiasco about asset recovery, I think give them until December. This is March 9th. I think given until December, this whole thing will fall apart and people will go their separate ways because they can't afford it, right? And that does seem, maybe we're on the outside, but I haven't seen a concrete strategy in terms of how they plan to approach that. At least with WIA, he brought in well-known, highly placed forensic auditors to start looking at the CBL data, because money leaving the country goes through, and you know this, right? It goes through SWIFT, right?
Yep.
Because SWIFT is an international transfer system. It's not like here in the US where we use the Fed. We use the FRB FedWire system to move cash around. Yeah, FedWire. So I think they're just looking at it on a domestic standpoint, because when the other countries who did it, like how when Nigeria repatriated billions from the island nation of Jersey and even some of the banks over in Switzerland, they did that on an international scale. Even the properties that the U.S. Attorney Office seized in Houston. Look, only 1% of cases in the U.S. go to trial. Of civil cases in the U.S. go to trial. 2% of criminal cases go to trial, right? It's less than like 3% in totality. But what I've seen them do, I think they're just looking at it domestically. So that is a done deal. But here's the thing to your question. So the War Crimes Court doesn't really do a whole lot in terms of what investors, because you know on the banking side, as an investor, what we're looking at, right? We're looking at the rate of return. We're looking at how stable the government is. For example, HPX. HPX trying to get that deal in Guinea. One of the things that HPX did was they went over to the World Bank and they purchased political insurance.
Okay.
Because any type of instability, they will be able to, I think they purchased the insurance for almost like 200 million or so. from the World Bank. That was something when I was trying to put together a cross-border mortgage program. I was looking at it from OPIC, the Overseas Partnership Investment Corporation.
Yeah.
So,
IFC does that too, which is part of the World Bank, right?
Exactly, part of the World Bank.
Yeah.
So investors are not really looking too much in terms of what you're doing in your war crimes court, but they're looking at the economic side of things, right?
Right.
That I haven't seen a clear definition of what this economic court is supposed to do. What they should be doing is just strengthening the judicial system. If we can see some high-level prosecution on the judicial system to show that you strengthen the judicial system, that, my friend, would invite investors to come in there.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have situations where you have Fumba Sirleaf and you have, Korean business people, money getting stolen, and you have all the other issues that nothing came out of it, nobody was prosecuted, that frightened investors. So the War Crime Court, I don't think it has any serious impact on a foreign investor, but more on the judicial system. How strong is the judicial system, especially the commercial courts and those things where people will be able to get some sort of an adjudication, go and something fair, right? Because when Boima Kamara was testifying during his confirmation hearing, he said there are situations where a defendant or somebody who owes the bank, a borrower, will sue the lender. And I'm like, that is nonsense. But that is Liberia. Because
you owe somebody and you sue the person. Why?
That's the same stunt that Donald Trump pulled on Deutsche Bank, right? He said Deutsche Bank stressed him after he borrowed millions and they asked him to pay. He said it stressed him, and he actually won the case. So that is the same nonsense that happens in Liberia. And the current finance minister, Boima Kamara, said that during his confirmation hearing. It was shocking. But that's the kind of thing that scares investors over there because, my man, look, if I'm going to invest $5-10 million or so, people don't pay back, or there seems to be some conflict within a contract, I can't have somebody going to sue me and then I know that I'm in the right, they end up winning. No, investors don't want to do that.
And then you even tied up in litigation for who knows how long.
Litigation for nonsense. So the War Crime Court is great in terms of the, bringing closure to this whole thing. They need to bring closure to it. The Economic Crime Court, I haven't seen a clear definition on it. I just want President Boyka to strengthen the entire judicial system. Because when if I wanted to ask this question, maybe Councilor Freeman, maybe you can help me on this. Was Moussa Dean ever confirmed? Now, I don't know if it was a confirmation. Was Moussa Dean ever moved to the Supreme Court? He was trying to get to the Supreme Court, right?
Yeah, it didn't
Did that
work.
ever take place?
It didn't work. Yeah.
Okay. He was another person who was involved in that whole thing with the asset recovery not succeeding. So a little bit of tidbit. I'm not going to go into greater detail, but I was a little bit concerned about that whole shenanigan. So,
I want to add on to what Larry is saying. When I went back Liberia in 2017, I had a couple of millionaire Lebanese guys who were interested, and the first thing they told me was just what Larry just said. He says the court systems, they don't want to they can't put their money in it because of they don't know how if they invest, how their money will get returned if they have to adjudicate it. And that is their primary concern. You're 100% right, Larry. Why aren't we strengthening the legal system that we already have if we even want to pursue this? So, and then furthermore, the USC, they will eventually out all the world, the international world, the US particular, they will see through it sooner or later. And I can tell you, they had already gotten fed up of the last administration. They were done with it. They knew what.
Can I take 60 seconds, Mr. Freeman? If it's okay with you, can I take maybe quick 30 seconds to pick it back on what Mr. Eastman just said? Something he just mentioned.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so real quick. So what my brother Jimmy just mentioned in terms of strengthening the judicial system, what they need to be doing right now, focusing on, is strengthening the entire government system so people are not stealing right now. Mm-hmm. Move away, because it's so shocking. I was hearing people traveling with cash to pay government employees, as opposed to some of it, as opposed to all of it being automated. Wow. What they need to be doing right now is fixing the gaps in the systems right now that allow people to steal money where there's no audit trail. Fix that, strengthen the judicial system, close those gaps, And then you can simultaneously do your asset recovery thing and all of that, but make sure that while you're doing that, people are not coming through the back door and the new people coming in are stealing. That's something you need to be working on right now.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Larry. So here's the thing, yeah. I think the war crime, I always like to separate the two.
Yeah.
Because the war crime deal with the physical atrocities, committed, and the economic crime is historical. But I think when it comes to economic crime, it is historical coming into the current time. So I don't think the economic crime needs limit, but the war crime needs a delimitation in terms of when it starts, when it ends. But the economic crime seems to just continue in Liberia. And I feel one of the biggest impediment to investment. Now, I don't want to go back over what Larry and Jimmy said, but one of the offices of the biggest impediment to investment is the national legislature and the office of the president, and by extension, the Ministry of State. You guys will recall there was a Moe Stevens audit that said that I think 95% or so of the concession deals in Liberia were in violation of Liberian laws.
Yeah. 68,
so why is that so?
66 out of the 68.
Fine. It is so because when the investor make an investment deal to the national legislature, they probably want kickbacks. And by the time they get kickbacks, there's no incentive to review the document again.
Yeah.
So the investor gets to write anything he wants to write in the agreement because nobody is interested now in reviewing. Everybody got their stuff. If you follow the news under the WIA regime, especially, there was a McGill and another lady there were regularly accused of shaking down investors.
Yeah.
So Bouakai will have a whole lot to audit the national legislature. These guys receive like 25% to 30% of our national budget. They have done so for the past 12 to, 18 years, whatever, and they have never been audited. Never. It's incomprehensible that these guys have spent, at least from my count, about $650 million over 12 years. It probably could reach $1 billion if you pick it up from 2005 to now. There was never a point in time that they were ever audited. This is crazy. Nobody should receive money from the public treasury and not be subject to audit. Nobody. So part of the reason why we have a lot of millionaires there, like Prince Moe, what the other guy, the guy with Bouakai, the VP,
cool.
and a whole bunch of them, they are rich millionaires, is because there's no audit. So where there's no audit, the guys continue to do what they always do and discourage investors from coming. So only the crook investor get to come because they're willing to pay whatever they are demanding, but the serious investor will not come. So if you start a routine audit of the national legislature, it will kind of calm down on our need to start shaking down investors and all of that. Then there will be proper scrutiny of investment agreements. The office of the president, what is Bouakai waiting for? Why doesn't he audit the office of the president for the past couple of years? Whatever. What is he waiting for? The Ministry of State, that where McGill operated, from which he was sanctioned. What is Bouakai waiting for to commission an audit? Those are the things that you would do that will signal to the international community that a serious person is in charge.
Yeah,
maybe we should take a second look. But he's not doing that. He got what a boy that always read on the internet, Martin Colley. He got Martin Colley, he put him on asset recovery whatsoever.
Rescue Rambo, so, is how they call him.
Yeah, so you got the serious thing that you should do. Streamline that, because the national legislature got to be audited. I mean, there's just no way. The office of the president, the Ministry of State, the MPA, because that's the gateway to the economy. But the man who abused the funding the pastor, the reverend pastor or the rescue pastor, he appointed a guy as the
Luther?
for MPA to the gateway of the economy. The man was right to chairman as UP, and dip his head into 300 and some more thousand. Up to now, there is no investigation. And you appointed that man to the gateway to the Liberian economy, to MPA as board chair. Wow. I mean, what is Bwaka thinking about? So, you know, I like to separate the war crime thing because it has delimitation in terms of time scope. But I think economic crime have been continuously perpetrated on Liberians. Yeah. So we don't need no delimitation of time. We need to go into every economic crime perpetrated against Liberians and bring the perpetrator to book. Yeah. And every day that Bwaka does not do this is one additional day for people to attempt to destroy evidence.
Yeah. The longer.
And these are people who have the means. For example, McGill, Bakuba Jr. These are people who are senators now. They still make money. They still in high position. They have the means to attempt to and continue to destroy evidence. The longer Bwaka takes to commission an audit. So for me, that's my take on it.
So
yeah. The other day, you mentioned McGill. He welcomes the asset recovery team because he knows it's a lion with no teeth. He got no teeth. So he said, "Yeah, we welcome him. Bring it." Because in his inside, he laughing. This is just another flow show.
So
you know,
go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, but you see, if they take the approach where they bring in, a credible law firm, an international law firm, because one of the groups we're looking to bring in is a group that went after Saddam Hussein's wealth. So it's a group based in the UK, and they went after Saddam Hussein's wealth. So you don't even need, like what Mr. Freeman just mentioned, just take a look at the US sanctions list. Right there, you have your top 5 people you need to start investigating right now and auditing, right? So you have your Bill Tuare, you have your McGill, you have, I can't think of all the names on that list, but the sanctions list, the who's who on the sanctions list, a lot of those guys don't be legislator right now. So
Nukwe,
all of that. So, yeah, so those are some of the things, those are the people there right now you can start investigating. But I think it goes back to an earlier point that Mr. Freeman mentioned. If you're using a judicial system in Liberia, you're absolutely wasting your time, right? You're wasting your time because it was the same thing. And you guys know we talk about this on this show, right? The same reason why the guy from Mozambique, Michael Cheng, the former finance minister, he wanted to go and be tried in Mozambique because he led that scam, the tuna fish scam for $2 billion. That's why he's sitting in a prison right now on trial over in New York City. Because when you do these kind of things over in African countries, in the African judicial system, you're wasting your time. You're absolutely wasting your time. So back again to Mr. Freeman's point, something that I said earlier, separate that war crime score from economic crime. Economic crime will always be there. The economic saboteurs, they will always be in your country. You just need to strengthen your judicial system to grab those people and throw their butts in jail after they get prosecuted. So I think, I don't know, man. I'm seeing this government within the first 60 days, and they're just making a lot of amateurish steps, a lot of amateurish errors.
Just in addition to what you say, I participated in the 2017 election. I was vice presidential candidate to Oscar Cooper.
Okay.
So the 500 bills they introduced at that time in Magibbi, they call it Nukwe. That's the nickname for the 500 bills. They call it Bill Nukwe. Yeah. So we were having a debate, and Nukwe didn't show up, but he was there around distributing Nukwes. And Bwaka knows about it. And Bwaka chose Nukwe because Nukwe had the 500 bills.
Right.
And how does he have it? Because he's in the national legislature. They get to authorize currency, prints, and they get back to channels through which some of those money come to them. So the 500 bill was named Nukwe. And that's why the U.S. put him on sanction, maybe not for that identical reason, but for the overall corruption. Mind you, this was Bwaka VP in 2017. Fast forward to his current VP, who is well documented in audit investigative report to be making deals and sending funds to his private firms, you know, and Bouakai took him because he had money to put in a campaign. So you got to find out what is Bouakai priority, what is his campaign, what is his values to believe that he will champion this.
I
But
think
his
they're just doing it
deadline,
for sure. They're just doing it for sure because
if he wants to do it, I tell you, one of the best places is to audit that national legislature. Is one half of the problem in Liberia. Audit that place. The office of the president, audit it. The Ministry of State, audit it. The MPA, start from there. But where he?
The NSA, right?
Well, I want to ask you guys to dig deeper, and from Councilor Freeman and Larry and even Gabriel. There's information available to our partners. They got tired, they got fed up with the we administration. They really wanted him out.
Yep.
But then they know of this, you know, they have scrutinized the other operations that are going on in Liberia right now. And it appears that it's much of the same. So do you think there is a strategy or an operation in the making to sting operation that is in the making for this current administration? Because they are in the know. They just the information you're providing right here, Mr. Freeman, those people have all this information firsthand.
You know, if there's one thing the U.S. government is very good at, they're very good at eavesdropping on their so-called partners, right? Because they were the same ones who tapped Angela Merkel's cell phone. I'm not sure how they even managed to do that. Because when it comes to engineering, the Germans are all the way up there, but the U.S. managed to do that. And we all know growing up in Liberia that the Voice of America was there to eavesdrop on all of Africa. That's why they were there for. These guys don't know that the U.S. government has the ability to listen in sometimes on their cell phone calls. Because it's not like over here in the U.S. where you actually need, I can't think of the law, but you actually need, you actually need a something from the court in order to tap someone's cell phone in here. That doesn't stop them from doing it. But yeah, so is the U.S. government, you know, trying to set up a trap or something? I don't think so. I think all they're trying to do right now is to give this government, like any government coming to power, give them an opportunity to try to set things right. But rest assured, the fact that the Global Magnitsky Act came in play right at the time that Ellen was leaving, and right at the time that President Bouakai came in, the U.S. passed this new kleptocracy law that now says not only are they going to sanction you, but they're going to try to prosecute you as well, provided your money have used the U.S. Banking system in some way. But the fact that the U.S., if you go to foreignassistance.gov, the fact that the U.S. is sending over $100 million per year to Liberia, at some point, you might end up touching some of that money. And we know what's the two guys who messed with that World Food Program money that were brought to the U.S., tried and thrown in jail for almost a decade. You mess with U.S. money, not only now do they have the ability to sanction you with Global Magnitsky, but they can come and grab you. And who are you to stop them from grabbing you, right? We know because SEAL Team 6 went into, Pakistan and did Bin Laden in. So all I think that you hear people saying, no, to your point, Jimmy, I think the U.S. is going to give this administration a little bit of time, right? Because if you see what happened recently in Zimbabwe, the president, his wife, and a whole bunch of people got sanctioned. Is that correct? Yeah. So they're going to give them time, but rest assured, sanctions, I think there's so many shady people in this new administration that somebody would eventually end up not only being sanctioned, but end up on trial in the U.S. court for being involved in some hefty corrupt activity. You know, and you know the U.S. tend to do this stuff around World Corruption Day, that's sometime in December. So you can rest assured. I think it's going to be crap.
That's when Halloween happens.
Exactly. That's when the boogeyman comes to town. But I see Chico over here is asking if we're saying that people should just come to Liberia and steal. And no, you strengthen the judicial system. You won't have to worry about that. Anybody that steals should be prosecuted. Because with all the resources Liberia have, there is no reason Liberia needs to be poor. But Liberia is where it is because you don't have a strong judicial system. That's what it is. Nobody should be able to come over there, lift stuff, get away with it. In fact, if you know people who have stolen stuff, the US FBI has a whistleblower place where you can actually claim almost up to $1 million at times, and people have been paid. So if you know of a foreign government official who have stolen money, come to the US, purchase a big mansion or build a big house, you go onto that FBI website, you put it in there, and they follow through with it, you can make big bucks. So we're not saying anyone should come to Liberia and just rip off, the country and then get away with it. No, far from it. Far from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a story. I don't know you guys have ever heard of this story. They were trying to deploy a postal telecommunication system in Liberia, and the company involved was a company called Huawei. It's a Chinese company.
Yeah.
Huawei.
Yeah.
Exactly. Huawei is banned in the US because they say they put listening devices in their machines and equipment, so they're not allowed. So Liberia they were negotiating to bring this company to Liberia, and once they reached near the end, all of a sudden the deal was shut down, and no answers why, but the deal was shut down because the US had flagged their company that they were, the activities they were involved in, they didn't approve of it. And so the whole thing was shut down. I mentioned this because I've seen them flex their muscle when they're ready at any time they want. So, and that's why I posed the question. If they have the information available, so are they waiting for a certain thing to happen before they do it, or there's something in the making?
Well, let me chip in on that. Normally, the U.S., especially the way the investigative offices work, the DOJ and the FBI, they do put in a lot of work in accumulating evidence. So sometimes if the evidence doesn't reach the threshold of what we call clear and convincing, they might wait and continue the collection of evidence, because it has to be to the threshold of clear and convincing.
Right.
So if they feel the evidence that they have is good, but we're not at the threshold of clear and convincing evidence, they might decide, let's continue to dig. So it's possible they could continue to dig and accumulate the evidence. But the other thing is that with the sanction thing, there are three offices coordinating: the Office of the President, the DOJ, and what they call OFAC, the Office of Foreign Assets Control, under the Department of Treasury. So there is a kind of coordination. So even, and to some extent, the State Department. So even if one branch feel the evidence is okay, they still got to coordinate with the other people, because at the end of the day, when they get to do the sanctioning of people, these other agencies will have to buy into the project. So eventually, I feel it is the process of accumulating evidence that takes time. I want to believe, like, for example, some of the people who were sanctioned under WEA were not necessarily for things that they did in the WEA regime, but accumulating of things that they did that may have extended coming from the Ellen era up to WEA era. So I wouldn't be surprised if they come up with a new list that have people from the WEA era coming into this. But here's the thing. Bouakai owe it to the Liberian people to do audit and investigation, to do prosecution. There were some serious crimes, like, for example, the selling of our passports. Our diplomatic passports, our passport, our foreign consular position was sold on a wheel. He commissioned an investigation and nothing came out of it. Parker has to investigate. You know, there were shakedowns of investors from the office of the president and Ministry of State when McGill was there. Nothing came out of it. So he can't continue to delay this thing, you know, bringing up all kinds of committee. I mean, what is that committee going to do? You got MOJ, you got LSCC, you got FIU, you can set up the office of the ombudsman. So what is that committee going to do now? And the committee, they don't even have prosecutorial power or anything like that, you know? So I don't know what is it. So it's just mere politics, you know, because there was a string of bad news. You know, this whole tenure thing not going well.
Yeah.
Some of the people he appointed is not working. Many bad news. So he just decided, look, I know one news that will work. If I just say I'm going to collect the assets from people who stole, I will be very popular. And he's on a roll, you know, but it won't last forever. Eventually, the government may not be able to carry on some of its core functions. And there's going to be like protests and other things because if people don't get some services that they are accustomed to, there will be protest. Now, I think I heard it, even delaying with the payment of 7 salaries, you know. So when these things start to pile up, even the good news from the asset recovery thing is not going to help him.
In fact, there is a planned protest.
Wow.
There is a planned protest in the making. And so they're giving them the time. The time is going to happen. It is already in the making. So these tactics they're using, if it doesn't if they don't make a substantial difference, they will have a lot of crises on their hands. We already saw some of it, but that's just the tip of the iceberg.
There's a protest?
There's a planned protest.
And why?
Yeah, it's Liberia. There's always a protest.
That is true, but it's on the ground. Liberians know about it. There's a planned protest. I think they're planning it for. I don't want to say on air, but they are planning a protest. So it's really this government. They need to really do the people's bidding and not self-serve themselves. It will not work. This is a different administration, and then Ellen, and then we are. The people are on edge, and I don't think they will have as much leeway as the other administration had. So we're going to see a lot in the very near future. We had the soldier wives was an example of the patience level what we've seen already. And
the Kinjal violence.
Yeah, and you're seeing the things you're seeing is that the Liberians are getting very impatient, and just what you're saying, what you alluded to, that if the salaries and stuff are not forthcoming, I hear they're having all kinds of little problems. It's not. There's a lot of things in the making that they have to really be careful with. You know, they have to care. They have to do the people's bidding.
Wow. All right. Any more follow-up thoughts?
Yeah, one thing quick. I think to Jimmy and my man Freeman's point, what they're not paying attention to. Oh, and I see my dear sister Ruth Roberts over here. She's a good follower of this show. She liked the intellectual conversations, which is good. So what they're not paying attention to is the fact that the Liberian dollar, since this administration came in, has been falling little bit at a time. And you know, when the dollar starts falling, the prices of things eventually goes up, right? Because if you're spending 183 LRDs today, it goes up to 193 or so, or 195. That means you need more Liberian dollars to purchase the same thing you were purchasing yesterday, right? So as the Liberian dollar starts losing value, it creates some type of inflation, right, on the ordinary people, because the ordinary people spend most of their money buying food, buying gasoline, and all of those important things. So they're not paying attention to that. If they are, maybe, I don't know, maybe they might be paying attention to it, but I don't see a clear strategy that is going to address how to strengthen the Liberian dollar, how to strengthen the Liberian economy. So they're not paying attention to that. So that's going to come back and bite them. And I think that goes to Mr. Freeman's point. And the other thing is, if you pay attention historically, if you pay attention to what goes on in terms of global economy, in terms of global things. We know in 2007, 2008, the financial crisis started, right? We saw the failure of the big banks. And we know that when the U.S. economy sneezes, the rest of the world catches a cold. That's a kind of a saying. We all know that.
Right.
That impacted the Liberian economy. That ran up until about 2010, 2011. So every 3 or 4 years or so, something traumatic happens in the world, right? And then right after we're kind of easing out of the financial crisis, by December of 2013, Ebola hit. Ebola came in from Guinea over to Foya, over in Lofa. And then Liberia struggled with Ebola for several years. All of the investors, because we have this extractive system, the investors fled the country.
Yeah.
And Ebola hung around until sometime in, I think, 1815 or 16 or so. And just when you thought Liberia was doing great again, then about 3 years or so later, by March of 2020, COVID hits, right? So COVID comes in. So every 3 or 4 years or so, something happens. And when you thought things were getting better, what happens? Now we see the war going on between Ukraine and Russia, and Ukraine and Russia combined puts out about 37% of the agricultural products out there. That's why we saw prices on basic food items around the world getting expensive. And then we see what's happening right now with Hamas and Israel and the proxy war that makes it extremely difficult for ships carrying cargo to go through the Suez Canal. They have to go all the way down through the Cape of Good Hope. So prices of stuff goes up. So why got it coming in at a time where I think we're kind of priming now for another crisis? I hope it doesn't happen, but just looking historically over the past maybe 10 to 15 years and seeing what happened. So they need to focus on that. All this other thing they're doing, they're not focusing on the key thing, right? Which is the economy, which is what is driving the U.S. politics right now in the election, the economy. I know immigration is a big thing. But we need to focus on the Liberian economy and strengthen it, create jobs. This whole asset recovery thing, the fact that they're doing it with just a task force or a committee, you're not bringing any international forensic accountants or international law firms to spearhead it, it's a joke. You're wasting time, So just wanted to throw that one in there.
I agree with you, and I think to maybe add a little bit to what you're saying. When I think in January when our preliminary budget came out and we found out that it was going to be 625 million as opposed to the 780 or even 800 million, I thought when these guys take over, their gut reaction was going to be, oh shoot, this is where we're starting. These are the things we need to start focusing on. How to really, we're starting at a budget shuffle. How do we, domestically bring up this revenue and communicate well in the public things that they're going to do to bring up? But none of that, we're not, like you said, we're not seeing any of that, and they're just oblivious as to what's happening on the global market, in the geopolitically, and they're just in the hollow Liberia with their face down and think that even the asset recovery is just everything that they're doing. They just think it's just asset recovery that's going to happen in the country. And like you said, we're not looking at it on the global perspective, the cycle that the global economy is in and how that's going to impact, or most importantly, how do we brace for that? Like you said, how do we brace for that when it happens, at least we're on a good trajectory that we can hold on to something and say, at least we can hang on to this and ride the wave. But none of that, we're just, like you said, like I keep giving them grace. Give them 6 months, give them to a year. Things will hit the fan. And the protests we're hearing now, maybe you'll be hearing 1 or 2 or 3 you will hear, at least in the opposition, that's when you'll start hearing more people in the opposition going at them. So let's give them grace, let's give them time. But I think exactly everything that you guys are saying is true. But their priority is messed up, or they don't even have priority, to be honest with you.
I want to go back to the Cape Mount thing real quickly before Brother Freeman comes in. There's been an irresponsible the companies that come, these extractive industries, they that come to do business in Liberia, there's nobody putting them on in check. There is rampant deforestation going on. There's pollution. They are poisoning our waters, our rivers. That's what the part of that Cape Mount protest was all about. It is real, and there's nobody putting these people in check. And if we do not address it, it's not just today or tomorrow, but this will affect us in years to come, and our children and our posterity. I think we all want to see, a very responsible government, and everybody was looking to see that this particular administration was going to be that responsible government. I don't know how you guys look at it, but they got a lot things going on in Liberia that need to be checked right now. They need to be stopped.
I think the bar right now is if we can do at least as better than we are, or at least at the same level that we are did, then we're okay. Because we are is the lower bar. The lower we are administration was the bar that's set for them. So for them it's just and that is very low. If we can touch that, we are fine. That people will be quiet. At least he's better than we are. At least this administration is better than we are. But I think that is a trap within itself. I think at that level.
I'm not sure it will work for Bwaka. Because remember what Bwaka said, that the first UP government squandered opportunities.
Mhm.
Okay. So if the first UP government, and when he said UP government, he actually meant Ellen and not him.
Mhm.
So if the first government under Ellen squandered opportunities, it means he has to be better than that one.
Exactly.
Yes, that's the real test for him. So they're making a lot to measure themselves with WIA, but that's not the real measurement. The real measurement is against UP 1.0 and 2.0.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but I tell you what, for now they're in what we call honeymoon period.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Everybody cutting them slack, the citizens cutting them slack.
Mhm.
But I don't think it will be very long.
No.
Because under the early regime, they were surviving on that 500-600 million because there was a lot of support from the international community
Yes.
catching
Exactly.
up on the slack.
Yep.
So they could afford to use up the 600-700 million, and there was not a problem. People started seeing it backfiring on a WIA because that international largesse was significantly reduced.
Yeah.
And so WIA struggled because he was already stealing whatever was being collected locally here in the national legislature. And I keep hammering home the national legislature. That place is 50% of the problem in Liberia. The national legislature.
Yeah.
And the first thing to do over there is to audit those people for all that many years, and so that we can know who all compromise the interests of the Liberian people, who are engaged in double dipping, conflict of interest, and we can just clear the weed, from the crops. If we can do that, it will be a good start, because there's the people who eating up 25 to 30% of our budget. They don't face accountability. Then they prevent real investors from coming because they put up a lot of bottlenecks. They want kickbacks. You remember the famous All Black 13 thing and all of that. And they take the King George thing. All of that is coming from the national legislature because they fail to scrutinize these documents once they have gotten their kickbacks from these investors. So if you don't scrutinize the document, then most likely the interests of the common people will be compromised.
Yeah.
And it doesn't give them any incentive, because there are two bodies there. You got the NIC that help to bring in, but you got something they call the National Bureau of Concessions. So that body is supposed to do like review and all of that. But they
Too
not
many
functioning.
bodies.
Yeah, so Liberia doesn't lack laws and institutions. What we lack is that commitment to the country to ensure that these laws that are on the book are enforced. For example, here is Bwaka. he wants to go after assets. He's talking about prosperity. His own asset is concealed.
Exactly. As a man.
See the irony. A man who has concealed his asset, failed to disclose his asset, constitute an asset recovery committee to go look for assets. I mean, but sometimes I wonder what Liberian people can really be thinking on.
Do what I do, don't do what I what is
Yes,
it?
he's concealing his assets.
Do what I say, don't do what I do.
After concealing his assets, he now constitute a committee to go look for assets.
What a joke.
Why doesn't he start first by disclosing his assets? What is he hiding?
Oh wow.
So that's just my thoughts on it.
Larry, go ahead. I had a question for you guys. Last question before wrap up. But go ahead.
Yeah, consistently real quick, when Jimmy mentioned about what happened in Grand Cape Mine, it had me thinking the largest mining company in the world is based actually here in the US, and they have a mine over in Ghana. And when one of the employees passed away from an accident, the mining company made a big deal of it in terms of recognizing the issue. They put it up on their website, and they, sympathize with the family, and they look at the policies on how to make things better. But you look at the people who have concession agreements in Liberia, and you see how they abuse the system, how to go in there and do not meet their legal, contract obligations. They don't meet the legal obligations, and they get away with it. The whole strategy, the concession thing it has never led to a country graduating to a middle income or even developed status if you get into concession agreement. That whole strategy doesn't work. And I see the same old strategy of concession agreements is coming back into play in Liberia. It's nonsense. It's not going to work. Iron ore, you have an abundance of iron ore. Over Friday on the exchange, iron ore was up like $19. Iron ore trading around over $2,000. Iron ore. So when you see people like HPX, Mittal Steel, and all these guys coming to Liberia, these guys are making billions.
Yeah.
They're making billions. HPX is looking to pull like 1 million tons of iron ore out of Guinea through Liberia, and eventually I'm sure they'll probably get a concession or something in Liberia. That's going to amount to over $10 billion in the amount of time they're looking to do that. Gold is trading at over $700 an ounce. You have an abundance of gold. So when I see G. Gwen mentioning in the chat how Ghanaians are coming over in Liberia and doing illegal mining, I was at a meeting where high-level government officials were complaining that the Liberian government wasn't doing enough to stop illegal mining. I mean, these are the kind of things you're focusing on. Look, I'm stopping illegal mining over here. I don't want to get involved too much in concession agreements. Let's see if we can get something here in Liberia to do some of the value added. Maybe set up a steel plant. I know we are far away from it, but the companies who are raising $500-600 million for these projects in Liberia, like HPX and even the Lobito corridor that's going on in Zambia, you can do that stuff in Liberia if they wanted to do it. But you're seeing a form of neo-colonialism where America now competing with China, and they come into Africa and putting a lot of resources. And I'll say this final thing. Democratic Republic of Congo, for example, that has a mineral that every cell phone computer in the entire world,
right,
the DRC.
Mm-hmm.
And look how poor the DRC is. There is something fundamentally wrong with Africans that I can't seem to figure out. And Liberia is even worse.
Even worse, yeah.
Because we have an abundance of resources, and I don't know if it's the resource curse, the Dutch syndrome, or what the hell it is, but I'm telling you, we can't seem to get it right. People are chasing tenure positions when those jobs should be posted somewhere. Let the most qualified apply for it. I'm not applying, but definitely give people who want to be in that field an opportunity to apply for it. The president appointing fire chief. Oh my God! Stop giving up on Liberia. I'm telling you. One time I was optimistic, but you can't come in and say you're going to rescue the country and you're doing the same thing that was being done in the previous administration and the administration before that. You got to change your strategy if you want to do something and make a change for the people. You got to change your strategy.
Yeah. So I have a question for you guys. I think we maybe it's not a tangent. I think it's kind of related. So I think it was Wanda that mentioned that the fraudulent activity that took place on those concessions. I think there was 66 out of the 68 that were deemed fraudulent. I too went and did my own investigation. I only read 2, and I could see the reason why those people concluded. So, do you guys think it would be an ideal place to start to maybe? I know it will be a tough battle to maybe review those concessions out of those 66 concessions that were deemed fraudulent and renegotiate them, or renegotiate the terms, because if those companies are still operating in Liberia, I mean, they're still exploiting, the Liberian people. And if you want to start the economic crime court, I think that would be a good place to start. But do you guys think it will be an ideal place to start to review those concessions and rectify them correctly?
Well, I will let a legal luminary here go on, but first, from an economics standpoint, if they violate the Constitution, if they are in violation of the Constitution, and we are at an economic disadvantage, I don't see why not. But I do know some things like that. I remember they went and renegotiated Firestone back in the 70s.
That's what I was just going to say. Tauber did that. He brought them under to be audited, and he renegotiated every terms in that. Brought them back on the table.
There is a possibility if they're serious about it, they can do it. Right. But especially things that are in violation and in clear contradiction to world economics and world agreements. If they can look into it, and they might be able to adjust those things if they're interested.
Right.
It takes a will.
Wonder.
Yeah. I don't see them doing it, though. I think it's a very good thing, because that would be an indication that they committed some wrongdoing in the past. For example, a lot of the concession agreement was signed when Bouakai was representing the executive at the Capitol.
Yeah, it was on a.
And some of the people who are there now, like Alex Tyler, who is a senator now, was Speaker. Yeah, and so many of them, they were there when a lot of these illegal activities went on. But yes, a justifiable basis for asking for renegotiation is when there is a violation of the law, and it doesn't have to be the Constitution. It can be other relevant statutes, that were violated. You can ask for a renegotiation, But
what if there's covenant violations in the contract? Let's say you sign a contract and you say, you know what, I will build this road, or every year I will commit just say 500,000 or $1 million to this school in this district, but you failed to do that. And could that, that is also a basis, right?
That is also a basis for calling for renegotiation if you can establish a breach of the contract. That is a basis. But I'm just saying, who's going to call for it? The Fonati Kofa and what he name, Thomas Fala. Thomas Fala, they were in our legislature, trying to enrich themselves. Who's going to call for it? Alex Tyler, Nathaniel McGill, Bakuba Jr. Look at the Senate. Our Senate has the most number of U.S. sanctioned officials for corruption.
Yeah.
Are they going to call for audit? Renegotiation? Take the case. I don't think Bouakai even takes that into it. Take, for example, he appointed a lawyer who had ethical issues and could not go to the Ministry of Justice. And the same lawyer that had ethical issue for which he could not go to the Ministry of Justice landed at Labor. Just look at the logic. What is the logic? You have ethical issues, you couldn't go to Justice Ministry, but you can go to Labor. So these companies that have the problems, right, that some of them are labor related, like the things happening in King George, they are labor related. So he's not even thinking about putting some of the most credible face at Labor Ministry so that even the company can know that it's not going to be business as usual. So it's very sad because it's our home, and sometimes the way things are going, you just so disappointed. But at the end of the day, they are in power. They have to do it. They have to do it for the sake of the country, for the sake of the population that voted for them. And stop this show. You take a drug test, for example. What does that mean? It's just a show. It's the same show that got him concealing his asset or constituting an asset recovery committee. Start with disclosing your assets.
Yeah. All right. Any more thoughts? I want us to go through these last comment and we'll wrap up. Because I think we have quite some cool.
Yeah, I'm going to say something real quick because I too have to hop real quick.
Yeah.
So a breach. So that if you're renegotiating contracts, it frightens other investors that come into your country because the investors have actually put up a lot of resources to purchase those concession agreements, right?
Right.
So if they're putting up 100, 200 million or so that they have lined up with other investors on Wall Street, and you renegotiate that contract, it frightens other investors from coming to your country because it's a huge risk. Now, if the contract has a breach, so it's kind of null and void, that's different. Kill it, move on, bring in new investors.
Right.
Or decide to go and enforce the contract. But you should always have something in the contract that stipulates compensation in case of a breach, right? That's so important. Right. But we don't do that. So the other part is the economy, the Liberian economy, the budget is so dependent on these concession agreements that they are afraid to try to renegotiate or try to take any type of action against the people who they have these concessions with because they're so dependent on it. We don't have a diversified economy so that if someone in the extractive sector were to leave, we can say, oh, we have something to fall back on. So we're kind of at the mercy of these people who have given concessions to. And by giving concessions, you're giving people some type of a legal standing within your country that it can take you now to maybe an international court and win a case against you. So if they're breaching the contract, void it, move on. But again, you're still being pulled down at the ankles because your economy depends so much on it. So you better have a backup plan in place to replace that person right away. Otherwise, like Jimmy said, people might be protesting again. But gentlemen, I have to run because I have another meeting that I'm late for. Okay. But it was great. I will follow you guys online.
All right. Thanks, Larry. So I think the point that I was making is that, with the contract, right? So with every contract, you have what we call covenant cure provisions, right? Covenant cure provision. That means if I sign a contract with you and Jimmy, and let's say I breach the covenant, there's curable provision that's stipulated in the contract that can allow me to reactivate that contract, given that I can cure. If that means there was some compensation that I have to pay to cure the breach within our contract, that has to be done, right? And it doesn't have to be placed in our contract just by there got to be some for both parties, right? So if you write the contract, you have your own provision, I have my own provision. In case you breach it, there are things you can do to cure those breaches. That's on the ground that I think that if one of those things happen, or like you say, if it breaks the Constitution or it violates the Constitution, then we can renegotiate. But I think from what I've seen so far, most of the agreements that were in those contracts were not being met, and that's the points for which I was talking. I think when Tauber did it, I think he just did it out of from a policy standpoint where he just, hey, Firestone been in this country, they were not being audited. They just make money. Nobody know how much money they were making. He renegotiated the lease term and all of those things, and started making them pay some money. So I think for him it was purely political, but nothing that has to do with a violation of any covenant provision. But let's jump into this comment. We're almost at the 2 hours mark. This is Roof. I don't know if I say the last name. Bengba. Hopefully I say it correctly. She said Liberia needs. Let me expand this. He said Liberia needs her Jerry Rowland that will come to clean the system and set and set her on the path with other nations until our people can grab the concept of country against individual. We got a long way to go without educating ourselves, the entire country. All right. And then she said, furthermore, the people don't the people don't know the power they have because of the men like Lobo and other they look up to lying to them. I think when she said Lobo is George Lobo, she's speaking to here. Um, and let me see. I think this is her again. She says, "Share the show, please. Resources are generally here." Okay. And I think we looked at this one. Man, she's busy. Ruth, thank you for following. I suppose you've been a very good follower here. Um, and then the other comment here, and then you guys can stop me.
Yeah, just a point. All this thing about foreigners, why is that? This is just law enforcement problem. You have laws in your country. So there is no way. It's like in the US. You come here, there are laws here. But because the law enforcement works, so you know, you don't just step out of line that easily. Or you step out of line, you fall the fate of people like Stanton, you know. So it's no problem over there. Ghanaians and Chinese will not come in the country and just do things. But there is a law enforcement failure,
Mhm.
either from the MOJ or the LMP or the LACC, you know. So when your system breaks down, you can't blame the foreigners. They are just doing it because there's no law and order.
I agree with you. Yeah.
You know, I like to chime in there, Counselor. You know, it almost as if we are playing politics, or we're playing to be government official. In other words, we acting like we are doing the role, but we're not doing the role. You know, we got president, we got finance minister, we got this and that, but the people who occupy those positions, they are not seeking the country interest the way they should be.
Mm.
Eventually, what is it? In other words, eventually, the country's going to break down, because what these people are supposed to be doing is securing the future for our youth, making sure that we leave something to them, making sure that our lands are not polluted, the waterways are not polluted, the forests are not gone, the little resources that they're taking from us, we are regenerating it into the economy. And if they are not doing their function, eventually, like everywhere else, it's going to break down. We are pretending like we're running a government, but we're actually not. We have not been doing the things that we have to do to move the needle. We're pretending, and this pretending is going to catch up to us one day.
Yeah. All right. Let me share this again. No, I think I agree with both of you. I think we're headed in the direction of the South African, where things that go bad in that country, they just blame the foreigner in that country instead of holding their government accountable. All right. So Samba, oh, I think he's I don't know what that CFC means. I feel this administration is here to pay back and is still in the campaign. The president and VP left the country after the election and were not part of the transitional team.
No, that guy not on topic.
I know. We're on Earth and he's in Pluto. Come back to Earth, Samba. Here is another one. Man, Ruth. I know that whatever cup of tea or coffee you got near you, please drink some every Saturday and come back. If this is going to cause us inconsistency in Liberia and outside Liberia, get ready to pledge allegiance to going to Liberia for a massive civil education before 20. Oh wow, and she's talking about a grassroots. Before 2029, Liberia is slowly becoming a laughable stock. That's a very strong statement. You guys have any thoughts on that? I
Well,
think what
this
she's
is
also
it,
telling us too is that if we're seeing pretty much, I think who's that philosopher that said it, that you can't just sit on the sideline and watch people lead you astray in politics, right? If it is countries going the way that is going, then that means we all have to just pledge allegiance, go back and really do some grassroots movement to elect the right president comes 2029. Thoughts?
go ahead, Counselor.
No, I mean, I like to refrain from straight up political talk.
All right, this is it. This is Mr. Smith. Sorry if I say this correctly, Mr. John Smith, right? Is that all rogues come back as new or same rogues? Liberia in trouble. In trouble, I think he meant.
Let me just make mention of something for us to really grasp how our nation is retrogressing. The latest GDP per PPP, which stands for Purchasing Power Parity. Okay?
Yeah.
We are way below Sierra Leone. And long time ago, we always led Sierra Leone, but we are 4, 5, 6 countries. Sierra Leone estimate is at 25.88 for 2023 and $27.12 for 2024. We are at $12.90, half of what Sierra Leone GDP is, and 13.6 are projected for next year. We are half. And if we can just continue, if we just continue this trend, what she's saying over there, what's going to happen to the country? Eventually, it's going to collapse.
No, I agree. It's this is what I thought is supposed to be a shock, like a rude awakening for this administration, but from what they've
But here's a problem.
Yeah.
The country has to invest in productive activities in order to be able to jumpstart the economy, and push forward. But it's not like they're going to invest anytime soon, because if you stay adding up the payroll, at what point you will save to invest in maybe road network, in electricity generation, in maybe technical education. So, and those are the things that you will do in order for your productive sector, to flourish.
Yeah.
So people should not take it lightly when people criticize sometimes the people expanding the government and say, even at LACC, they have 7 persons there as commissioner. 7 for what? 7 for what? Yeah, you have a FBI director, and you have maybe 1 or 2 deputies, right?
Yep.
That's what we know. You have a director, you have 1 or 2 deputies. But they got 7 persons, and not only the commission there, they have law reform commission, 5 persons, and they got a whole bunch of others like that. So Boubacar needs to rein in all of that excess bureaucracy. You can have NRC, National Investment Commission, you got National Bureau of Concession.
That's
Bring
what
them
I don't
together.
understand. Right.
So when you do that, you free up resources that you can use for productive activities. And if you don't put money into productive activity, you will stay poor for a long, long time, because the other people who are elevating are putting money into productive activities.
Yeah.
And you are consuming. It's just like in your individual life. If you save some of your money, you can have enough money either to improve your education, you can build a house, you can start a business. If you eat all your salaries, you will stay where you are for the longest.
Exactly. What would the percentage go to a recurring expenditure, which is mostly salary?
I think it's like 80% or
80%.
90%.
Look at Gwen John Smith comment. She said how we wouldn't be behind Sierra Leone when they are investing in education roads, healthcare, and other social systems. Our representatives making thousands, they represent making 1,000, ours making 16,000. I mean, why when we bring these issues up about their compensation, that they're getting gas slips, that they're getting exorbitant salaries, that they make 10 times more than doctors, or 4 or 5 times more than doctors who need in country making. Whenever we bring these issues to them, they play deaf ear.
So I think a trend that I've seen, at least over the last 2 administrations, is that the money, domestic revenue that we collect, we spend all of it, and anything that has to do with investment, whether on roads, state-owned enterprises like the electric LEC, we go begging. We look to
And that's why we are
partner.
not growing.
Yeah, so we look at international partner to come invest in our road, invest in our electricity, or invest in these other infrastructure. But every money that we collect domestically, we spend all of that, and we just go panhandle to this
Yeah.
international
Thank
community.
you.
Yeah.
Right.
And
that's
that is
the-
why
that's
we are
the
not
habit.
growing.
Yeah,
That is
that's
why
the
we are
habit.
not growing, because 2 disadvantages. One, the donors will give you when they want to.
Yep.
And 2, most instantly they will direct you what to do with it.
That's exactly.
So it may not necessarily be what you want to do, but they say, yeah, my money I'm giving you, I want you to do this.
Yep.
And if you want to do that, no, you can't do it. So people need to tell Bouaka, because, probably we could all agree that we didn't understand these things, even though you have some other people who were there who could understand it, but he didn't understand it. Tell Bouaka, all this expansion of government, expansion is not going to help you, because very soon you will run out of money and there will be social chaos.
Yeah.
So that's why other people are developing more than us, because they are putting money into productive activities. We just consuming our money.
Yeah.
And half of it is consumed in corrupt activities. And my man, we're not here to check the number of corrupt activities at all.
He's taking a break today. Ruth again, she said, imagine Liberians voted for Tyler, McGill, and Bill plus the big man. I know,
Yeah, sir.
we still can imagine that. And this is Prof. I think she got 2 comments here. She said, I agree with Ruth. Seeing how far other African countries are moving and how far back we are, it's so sad. Man, these people are busy. A lot of comments here. Hold on, let me see if I can. Okay, I think she has another one here. She said, agreed. There are some sectors reserved for Liberians only, but there is no implementation. Foreign business people are not philanthropists. They will exploit weaknesses, and our country is weak and lack. Oh my goodness, and lack political will. That is true. And then, man, he said, look.
I think the people they're off tangent on the topic. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
All
they're
right, let
kind
me
of leaving
see.
the topic.
Can you put a cap on? Okay, wait, let me see. What about this one? Maybe this is something you guys can speak to. So can we put a cap on legislature salary up for referendum? Is that something we can do? You're the law guy here.
I think in order for Liberia to rescue the democracy, they need a new constitution. A new constitution. It is in that new constitution that you will put the limits on what people can do.
Mhm.
You will put a restriction. You will put the appropriate check and balances. And countries normally do this. Some countries are going through several constitutions. We have just gone through 2. But
So
it has to come from civil society acting as a whole and demanding a new constitution. I really believe, if I look at the structure, the way the state is doing, the way the legislature is performing, and now they are responsible to change some of the laws. And from what we see, the current legislature and the past one, there's no likelihood we'll get it out of them. I am tempted to think that we need a new constitution, but I think we can have that conversation for another day.
One of the one of our audience made the comment that, you know, what are we doing to educate our people? They're not aware. You see, they for somebody to elect people who have notoriety, there's something that's missing, and it is exposure and education, because knowledge is power itself. So our people you don't see broadcasts on the radio talking about exposing people to how they should think on issues of integrity, honesty, morality, and showing them how it would benefit them if they follow the rules and the laws, how it would benefit them if they do not encourage the people who have ill-gotten money, how it would benefit them if we go to work and work hard instead of just going to work and getting a paycheck. All these things have to be part of an education and exposure. It's not necessarily schoolwork, but you tell the people what they need to do to improve their livelihood. And this is not being communicated. And largely, we've seen this happen before. When people want to take advantage of people, that's when they keep them in the dark. You know, you don't give them the chance to understand these things so they will make a better decision tomorrow. So only thing I see we can do, y'all chime in, is continually telling people that there is a better way of doing this. And this thing that we're doing this way will not carry us nowhere. But we need a large campaign, like the commentator said, a large campaign to make people more and more aware of the way they need to be thinking for the future.
Yeah. All right. Last one here. I think this was a joke. He said you don't want to discuss mother and child death.
But it's not a topic for today.
In Liberia. Miss or Mrs. Bengba, I think that's a topic for another day. We don't. I think we're not saying it's not important, but that's not what we talk here. Usually, we talk issues that are economic. I'm sure there's a economic lens or finance lens or to that, but that is not what we talk about. So, sorry that we didn't talk about that, but we really do appreciate your input and your comments, and everyone who commented. Guys, I think we were at way over the 2 hours mark. I think we should wrap up. So I know we kind of went off tangent a little bit. We were, we started with the asset recovery team, and we talk about their roles. I know Wanda, you're very much opposed to that. You and Larry. I too agree with you. I don't see why they need to do that. I think they're just another task team that's set up that won't get anything done. And then we went from there. We talk about a little bit about the economic crime and war crime court a little bit, in terms of the purpose. But I want to hear you guys' final thoughts in terms of and as I always say, you can take it from any angle. You can look at it from the asset recovery team. Whether you think they're, you want to cut them a slack and see, like I keep saying, give them a year and see what happens. Or you just say, you know what, Gabriel, forget it. I've seen what I've seen. I don't think these guys are going to do anything. So the floor is yours, your final thoughts.
Okay. As regard the asset recovery thing, when somebody has done a policy in the past, there's just two ways to approach it. If that policy fails, one of the best things you can do is to just leave it alone. Don't copy it, do something different. But if you must copy that same policy, You have to do it in a different form and manner. But to take a failed policy and do it in the same identical way that it was done in the past and expect that the results will be different, I don't know how you call something like that. So the asset recovery thing was done by WIA. It failed. Even the asset recoverer admitted that the government were not serious. And Boubacar decided to redo the asset recovery thing. He's not have a different strategy or different approach. He just did the same identical thing, put 15 political people together and say, go and work. I don't see Martin as any kind of champion for corruption or anti-transparency or anything like that. He was just a henchman for CDC and a protege of the sanctioned Serena CFOS. I don't see anything better to do other than shaking down people. I think he is creating administrative confusion. You got the FIU, you got the LACC, you got the Ministry of Justice. All those three bodies are legislated to do the identical thing that he is now authorizing. What is all that waste of money? So I think it doesn't, for me, it doesn't make any sense. I think it's just something to push off his political popularity because things have been sagging for a while, people complaining, all kinds of problems. So he's just look for something. But eventually, Liberians will realize that the government has to deliver. And if the government doesn't deliver, there's going to be a lot of social problems. There's going to be a lot of protests and all of that, So Boubacar is running a tightrope. If he wants to do asset recovery, he has to first audit, he has to investigate, he has to prosecute, he has to be able to identify the assets. All of that has to be done. There has to be a court order. It's almost not possible for you to do asset recovery without a court order. So if you leave all of that, you go set up a committee and say finance ministry gave them money. You already start spending, even though you have not yet figured out what kind of asset you're going to collect, where is it, how much it is, how much you spend. I mean, it's just a bonkers idea, but that's Liberia now. Everything is political, so you just throw some political honey out there. I call it political honey, so people lick it and feel fine for a little while. And then after a while, when there's no result, then they realize they've been scammed. So as for the war crime, I think it's good. I think, but I don't see Boubacar commitment giving his dance with PYG. I really don't see him committed to it. And previous to that, he was a bosom friend of Uri. So I really don't see a commitment. But I think there's a need to continue on the line for economic crime investigation and prosecution. They should do it. It should be nonstop. It should be continuous.
Yes.
I don't see it to be a starting date at any date. Unlike the war crime, I'm sure it has a starting date and an ending date. But I feel economic crime should not have a starting and ending date because people continuously are exploiting the country and they need to be held to account. So I end on that note.
Thank you. Great thoughts. Jimmy.
Yeah, I'm going to be brief. We've covered a lot of bases here, and we concluded that the approach of this administration, they're sounding good, but the elements that will make a difference, we don't see them getting in place. But their challenge is going to be different. Ellen could run her administration the way she did it at that time. WIA ran his at that time. But what they need to realize that this administration has a different time and different challenges. We already seen the exchange rate starting to go up. There are other things that have been left from the previous administrations that they haven't even resolved yet. If their approach is superficial, they may have a bigger crisis than either one of those administrations they could criticize. So I think we can sound the alarm. Superficiality will not work. It will hurt you. So they better be authentic and professional, and bring in the proper expertise and go forward with that.
Perfect. I don't think I don't, well, not I don't think, I don't have any final comment on what we talked about today. I think you guys brilliantly said everything that we needed to say. Usually at the end, I usually caution our viewers, because usually people will come here and think that we're bashing the government or we're saying these things because we're leaning on another political side, right? And for me, to all of you, is that we have a stake in our country, and whatever government comes in, just as a child, you have a child, you want them to do better. We want them to do better. So sometimes you hear some of these criticism or calling them out for their shortcomings. It's not because we hate them or we don't want them to succeed. It's actually the other way around, because we want them to succeed. So that's pretty much what we do here, and I think that's what we're able to do here today, and that's what we do every time we come on here. I say that every time because I don't want you to think that we're just people that just come out here and just bash. No, that's not what we do. We, as I always say, we look at things from an economic lens. How is this going to benefit Liberia? How is it going to benefit everybody? And that's what we're able to do here today. So, as we always say, whether you like the show or you didn't like it, or whether you think we were bashing or we weren't bashing, or whether you think we were making sense, that's a common denominator that will remain the same, is that we will always be Liberians. Whether you leave from here, you go to Pluto, or you come back to Earth, you will still be Liberian. We'll find you wherever you are. Until then, have a good Saturday and have a good weekend.
Yep.
Ciao. Yeah.
Ciao.
If I can wrap up, give me 1 minute. And so it goes.
We are Liberia. Liberia is our home. Liberia people. We choose us.